Interesting times.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah. Um,
And I do what I can to not get swept up in it, swept away by it.
yeah.
Um, I really don't look at the news. I mean, I'm not a regular news reader.
Yeah.
The only reason I look at it is Susanna will tell me something is happening, and I will want to verify it.
Yeah.
And so I'll go and check one of a couple of sites to see what I can find, and then that's it. That's the extent of it. But she's trying to break her habit of being pulled into current events and news media and that kind of thing. And even now that she's cutting it back, she's still, because of her job and for whatever other reasons, she's still, this stuff crosses her path,
Mhm.
and she'll tell me about it. And it's always a case of, okay, all right, and have to work my way through it, find some way to let it go. Um, and I'm more or less able to remain unaffected other than the initial shock. And maybe sometimes, um, it kind of hangs around in the body for 5, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I think everybody has been finding ways lately to figure out how to cope with the news and feel it's something we've really thought a lot about too, because it's bridging that gap between what is, we can have like awakening experiences where it feels like everything is just perfect and great and it's meant to be this way and that's all wonderful. But we can't rely on the fact that that's still a subjective experience. Even if you have this realization that
Mm,
everything is perfect, that's a subjective experience. We don't know that
right.
it's actually true outside of your little bundle of chemistry that's going off telling you that everything is okay right now. So there is like that finding that balance of how to live in a world and actually have some sort of, human interaction with it. And either when you feel that everything is perfect and things are great and you don't have to, influence politics or, the social climate, or if it feels like we're, completely caught up in the mire of it, it's also good to have um, that check on how much of what we're feeling and experiencing is really based on reality and how much is based on our own projection of it and our preconceptions about it. So like today I saw the headline that they um, confirmed the new director of the FBI.
Mhm.
And what I have read about him, that sounds rather troubling. Um, that being the case, uh, or that being said, you know, you have to watch because like the initial thing is that we read something and then we'll fill in this whole storyline about, oh, and now that he's in, he's going to blah 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 blah. But he hasn't actually done that yet. There is a chance that he will put all of the crazy partisan shit and all of the other um, delusional conspiracy theories that he's believed in the past behind him, and will actually, bring a higher sense of duty to the position. But it's just interesting to see how quickly the mind jumps to filling in the gaps of what's going.
Mhm. But it always comes back down to, um, right now.
Yeah,
What's happening right now, because anything beyond that is, how did you put it a minute ago? Something about the mind. Oh, I wish I could remember how you said it because you put it really well. But
thank
something
you.
about the mind, uh, making its interpretation
Yeah,
of what's going on and what might happen.
yeah,
You know,
that's
anything beyond right here, right now is some sort of fabrication,
exactly,
story.
exactly. And it's amazing how worked up we can make ourselves over those fabrications when we have no idea where it's going. And yeah, it's
Mhm.
great to feel the relief of when it turns out that our wildest fears don't come true. We get that like moment of, oh, okay, I protected myself. I braced myself for the worst and it didn't happen. But ultimately, I think it's just better to come back to what is the actual, barest fact that we know? What is actually here in front of us right now? How much of everything is verifiable that we're locked into, that we believe right now? What is actually happening? And just keep coming back to that because the mind will keep trying to fill in those gaps and it will keep trying to project the worst possible outcomes onto the future. And it's good to have like, you know, it's good to be able to plan and to actually make courses of action and things like that. It's not just about sitting completely oblivious in a cave,
Right.
but it's helpful to also know that just because the mind is creating it, it's not real and it's not currently happening. Just because it can imagine something doesn't mean that that will happen. And it's such an obvious statement, but it's something that we really don't put enough attention on because we really act like because I can imagine it, it is going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me think of my experience with people prognosticating and predicting.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but for some reason, starting at a very early age, I mean, starting right around the time I probably was getting ready to start school, so somewhere around the age of 5 or 6. And I think it's because my mom had these books by this guy named Hal Lindsey, who I don't remember all of his books, but I remember one was called The Late Great Planet Earth.
Mhm.
It was this prediction of how things were going to turn out, and it was from a completely religious kind of
Yeah.
fundamentalist evangelical point of view. And for some reason, that got me paying attention to when people would make predictions. And what I
Mhm.
noticed after a period of years was that you get all these predictions, and as a general rule, they didn't agree with each other. Somebody else would make a prediction, and that was very different from this one. And most importantly, was that still to this day, none of them, none of them have come to pass. No one has been correct.
Yeah.
I can't help but conclude that human beings are absolutely abysmal failures at predicting the future.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so, like I don't normally look at Reddit
Hmm.
unless it's I'm researching something, trying to get
Yeah.
information about something, and then it comes up.
Yeah.
But I was looking at something on Reddit yesterday, and it was about current events, and it's that same thing in miniature. All of these people making all of these predictions. There might be some overlap, but by and large, they didn't agree with each other.
Yeah.
It's like it's amazing how people really believe their own thoughts.
Yep.
There's that principle of, or that maybe principle is not the right word, but there's this thing that they think because they think it's true.
Exactly.
And I was like, do you realize how insane that is?
Yeah. Yep.
And they don't.
And they do not. No, this is what it takes all this work that we do to weaken that false certainty that we have that I have all of the information, or at least all of the relevant information. I have done my research. I know these things beyond a shadow of a doubt. This is true, and it's going to happen. And it was just baffling, baffling, baffling.
Mhm.
That, but it makes sense because there is so much security in that. It's bolstering that sense of self. It's bolstering the sense of I can predict the future. You might find out eventually that you're wrong, but you're going to create some, like what was the guy who, he had created the there were at least three different apocalypses that he predicted, and each time they didn't happen. It was, oh well, no, I was wrong with the calculations. It's actually going to be in boy, and then everybody would gear up, and people were selling their houses, and like they were like really taking them seriously. I was like, sorry, got it wrong again. But the next one is really going to happen. It was, come on. But I think we all do it on a smaller scale where
Yeah.
it's like, even just the little things of like, predicting that, uh, well, Yeah, I mean, this is maybe getting off topic, but like we just bought tickets to go to Denmark for a few weeks in May and yeah, do some stuff there. And so it's like we're predicting, we're assuming that May is going to come and that we're going to be on a plane to Denmark, and then when the time is up, we'll be on the plane back home and that everything will happen. We're assuming that those things are gonna, we're making that prediction and we're living as though that's the case. We may be completely wrong. I mean, any number of things might happen, and that trip will never manifest. Um, but it gives like a sense of like, okay, I can plan on this thing now. And for most people, especially who don't do this kind of work, it's like we set up these benchmarks and like, I know how the world is and how it's going to play out, and I can create my 30-year life plan, and I'm going to like follow through with that 30-year life plan. And it gives you that sense of security. It's a largely false sense of security, but at least it makes you feel like you have some sense of control and predictability in life, which, you know, as we find, it's scant to, it's scant at best.
Right.
Um,
Well, I wanted to tell you about something that came up as a result of all of this kind of stuff. um, so yesterday, Susanna told me about some sort of political shenanigans that are going on. And like I said, I came back here, got on the computer, and looked at a few places to see if I could verify it.
yeah.
And it was one of those times when I couldn't verify it. Yes. And, that's the danger of getting information from Reddit. And she knows that. I'm
Okay.
kind
Yep.
of going to stand up for her here on that. Um, but there are actually two things she told me. The one was wrong, and the other just didn't even exist. And the other one, as it turns out, sadly enough, was true.
Mhm.
And so, um, in taking the time to sit down with that feeling and just give it some time, um, what bubbled up was this recollection of a time when I was in somewhere between first and third grade when the neighborhood bully, the primary one, I should say, because there were others over time, the primary neighborhood bully managed to sucker me into trusting and believing him. And what it wound up getting me was a punch in the gut.
Mm.
That I couldn't breathe. I immediately went
Yeah.
to the ground, and all of this to say that what what that seemed to be telling me was that the feelings of fear and threat that were showing up in response to this current event seems to be driven or a product of um, being bullied as a kid.
Mm.
Because I dealt with that regularly all the way through high school,
Yeah.
and so that's something that that's going to get carried around internally. And I think I think that on some level, a part of the mind and the feelings are taking current events as, I don't know if it's really a sense of being bullied. Perhaps it is.
Mhm.
If it's not a sense of being bullied, at least it's a sense of feeling threatened and powerless,
Yeah.
helpless, the
Yeah.
way that I did as
Yeah.
a kid with those
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important to get back into that feeling of that powerlessness, that helplessness, that feeling of that crushing authority on this, powerless child. Because, like when you felt that bubble up for you, when you had that moment of, looking up, did that feel to you exactly the same as you remember that feeling being when you were a kid?
Not about exactly the same, but it was very close.
No.
It was very much that sense of being completely, I can't think of the word, but rendered impotent, basically.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
not having any ability to do anything about it. The good thing was, though, is that I used it as an opportunity to do some reparenting,
Nice.
and that seemed to help.
Yeah, I was
That
gonna
seemed to
ask.
help. Yeah.
Um, what did you find? Did you do it like um, reassuring the younger Darrell, or how? What was the experience like? Did you find that there was something that you needed back then to hear that you were able to say?
There wasn't anything that was that explicit,
Hmm.
but the way it showed up was that in doing the reparenting, current Darrell went over to the bully and let him know that if he ever found out that he ever put a hand on him again, that he would be coming for him, and
Hmm.
that even if he tried something thinking he could get away with it, he wouldn't, because I would be looking for him and I would eventually find him. Come on, come on. If you're coming in, now's the time.
Oh wow.
For everyone on camera, that was Sweetie, her brother Frank, and Mrs. Godfrey. Big guy. So
So, so I'm curious, what was going on with the feelings of little Darrell at that moment?
uh, I didn't pay as close attention to that, but it seemed like there was this recognition of, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not helpless. I have resources, or I have an ally. I I I have someone who's looking out for me.
And because I was going to say, you might find that it's even more helpful to put the attention on the little Darrell. Like I get the
Mm,
potency of, standing up to the bully in retrospect and showing that actually who was a giant bully to you as a kid is now actually just a little kid to your current adult.
yep.
So the roles have shifted. Um, and so I get the kind of therapeutic basis behind that of being like, oh, okay, hold on a second. The monster that I was really scared of is actually just this, puny little twerp that has no effect on me anymore. So that's great. Uh, I would be curious because I feel like that little Darrell is the one that so needed the love and attention from his parents that in that it still sounds like you're again love that you're defending him and protecting him, but letting him know, like giving him that love and attention,
Oh,
it's still like you're kind of avoiding
well, I did.
Daryl.
I
Okay.
after
Okay.
addressing the bully, I turned attention and spoke to him,
Okay.
and
Awesome.
he and I went off to do something of
Okay.
his choosing.
Good, good, good. Okay. Happy to hear that then. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
just wanted to make sure that that was getting in there because yeah, we want to make sure that we're really reinforcing that loving, compassionate, here for you bond.
yeah. I guess I misunderstood what you meant, because
Oh, it's okay.
I when you asked that question at first, the picture that um, showed up in response to it was leading to thoughts that I don't know what happened with that.
Yeah.
So, but yes, that that's always a part of it. It's always a case of communicating to him,
Yeah.
that
Good, good.
you're protected, you're cared for. I'll always be here for you, that kind of thing. So
Good. Good,
I
good.
I always do that. I think when you first taught me or explained it to me, that you made that really clear, because that's just always been part of it.
Good, good. Just wanted to make sure. Um, that was when that you did that? The
The
that
reparenting,
yeah,
that
that's
was yesterday about this time.
okay. I thought it was recent. So I was going to ask, have you felt any difference as far as um, if you have heard anything, because again, it keeps relating to that authority issue. So I
Mhm.
wondered if you've felt anything recently being different.
It's hard to say. Susanna told me something. We were laying in bed this morning before getting up, and she mentioned, I forget what it was, but she mentioned something, and there was the shot of adrenaline and the sense of some sort of threat, and I don't know if it was had anything to do with yesterday or not. I really can't say,
Hmm.
because this is fairly true, pretty much in all cases. or most cases that, I hear this, there's that reaction, and then some thoughts around it, and the body sensation, that lingers for a little bit after the adrenaline, and then it's gone.
Mm.
It's not the kind, I don't think it's happened yet that I have spent, um, half an hour, or a whole day with this stuff just rattling around in the head.
Nice. That's excellent. Do you notice what's coming up before the shot of adrenaline? So
Um,
you hear a story and then what happens?
that's it. I mean, Susanna will say something immediately. That's the first thing, the adrenaline.
Do you find that there's like a certain type of story that causes that? Is there, because I'm curious what the connection is. If it's,
It's it's anything with these current events. I mean, pick anything. You know, anything where you've got these um, I say these mentally, emotionally, ethically deficient individuals, perpetrating the sorts of things they're perpetrating. Um,
why specifically do you think that that adrenaline spike is happening though? Um,
hmm,
for somebody else, right? They're gonna read the story and they might have a rush of like, yeah, amazing.
well, sure.
So there's something specific in you that causes the adrenaline spike, that feeling of fear. And I'm wondering if is there like a really fast chain of thought that happens when you read it that goes like of these, potentially where this is heading? Is there something where, most of the time there's something where it feels in some way uh personal, maybe not that, they're literally coming to round me up and put me in a van, but that there's something that, I can relate to that in some way. It triggers some sort of feeling of, like you talked about, like the feeling of powerlessness or helplessness, something like that. There's usually some sort of connection there that makes that feel particularly potent. I mean, it's
Hmm,
amazing that it's not hanging around, that you're not ruminating on it, that it's not building, but it's something else to be kind of interested in and curious about as far as
hmm.
what is actually happening when you first hear that story.
If there is anything like that, it happens so quickly that I don't notice it. I'll have to start paying attention. But it I you know the the time between hearing Susanna say something and the shot of adrenaline is, you know half a second.
Yeah, yeah.
So if it's happening with extreme rapidity.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, the only thoughts and mental activity around that I'm aware of is after,
Mhm.
hearing it, the adrenaline, and then, the mind will go somewhere for a bit and like, okay, this isn't what's wanted. There's no need to put up with this. No need to do this to yourself. Move on.
Yeah, good.
uh, but I think I think it's really more nonverbal. Um, well, I think it would be probably better described as sankara, in that there's this already established idea, belief, whatever
Hmm.
else is in there, that exists about um, these people, what they do, and the results of it.
Yep.
Um, and so when I hear something like that, it's just setting off something that's already preconditioned. Um, because it doesn't, in the initial moment, doesn't seem to have anything all that specific there.
Yeah.
But afterwards, there will be some very definite ideas about what this could mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and as far as the connection, you know well, I mean, let's face it, these people are bullies.
Mm.
They're
Yeah.
acting like bullies,
Yeah.
They're just doing it in a different way than, threatening to beat you up or stuff you in your locker. Um, and they're in positions of authority.
Mhm.
Now, a bully, I don't know that I've ever seen bullies as an authority, but they were something that you had to treat with some sort of begrudging respect because of
Yeah,
what they.
fear for repercussions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, the parallels between the bullies we deal with, for those of us who had to deal with it growing up,
Mhm.
and these lunatics, um, is it's not all that far removed.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, no arguments there. But it's also really interesting because again, for people who weren't bullied, this might have no parallel to them. There's no trigger
Right.
effect. So it gives us another opportunity to see what in you can use that healing because it's still being seen through that lens, right?
Hmm.
Like again, somebody else is reading the exact same story and they're applauding. You're
Sure.
reading it and you're reading it through the lens of someone who has been bullied and who sees bullies and who sees certain behavior and looks that way. I mean, it's very similar to like I've seen people in Germany have looked at, Musk's Roman salute and things like that and been like, I know what that is. We can't do that here. It's like you have a certain framework where it's like, this is checking some boxes, you know. But that's a lens that we're viewing that through. It's very clear through that lens as to what this means. It's really important to like note that when we're doing this stuff, it's not just about having it be that there's an ultimate reality to the fact that I am projecting a bully and a Nazi onto somebody. That is not true necessarily inherently because of my upbringing and my programming and conditioning and all of that. It's also not true though that we have to be completely, inactive and disconnected because we never have a clear view of something. The reason I'm saying this is because we can use all of this stuff to either completely bypass any sort of relevant action. I feel like I'm not explaining this right. What I'm saying is there's two different ways of dealing with this stuff. There's like the level at which things in the world are happening in some way, and we can engage with that in whatever way we want. And then there's the other kind of more personally introspective way of working with these things where we can go in and be like, okay, I can use this as a tool for my own inquiry and for my own healing and understanding. That doesn't necessarily mean that has to relate to that other level, right? Like, so you can use this just as a tool to find more ways into working with your bullied history without having to like do well, there's good people on both sides, or without condoning behavior that you don't morally believe in. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So like we can like I'll even do stuff where it's like, okay, there is a possibility that, any information that I see is completely, leftist propaganda, right? Like there's a possibility and there
Hmm.
is both, literally, I mean, there is propaganda on both sides, but it's like maybe I am in a bubble. And so I'm seeing stuff that like, MAGA people are writing that is like, if what they were saying is true, I could see for them why it makes sense and why it seems perfectly reasonable for all of these things to be happening, at least on the economic side of things, because they completely believe that that amount is true. Then I see the other side where it goes like, tearing apart all of those, those simple facts that get posted in conservative memes, and it goes into deeper explanations of why none of that is actually true.
Hmm.
Providing those explanations are true, well, then it makes sense that that side is more right than, more correct than the right. But there's also a possibility that there is swing and spin on that. And so I've tried just as a exercise to be like, okay, so what if I am in just a complete echo chamber of, leftist stuff? And how does that feel? How does that change the experience? And you can really, you know, shift that perspective and just kind of play with the subjectivity of it. Again, not to say that, you know, we have to actually believe that any of that is true afterwards, but as an experience or an experiment into the
Mhm.
awakening process and part of what it is to have any sort of belief system whatsoever. It's really relevant to like be able to kind of entertain all of the options and just see that we're always being pulled in one direction and that there's not necessarily any we can't verify the truth of any of it.
Right.
Like I saw there was an Insta video recently that was this woman was like completely outraged and she's like in Oklahoma there's a bill where they are taking they're shutting down the mental health department, like the Department of Health for that, and they're taking all of the like mental health records and they're shipping it to prisons and they're like connecting it to the prison system and like completely outraged about it. So I'm like, okay, you know, if that's true, that's deeply concerning. It was because it was mental health and drug abuse, you know, stuff. So like, okay, I see where that's going. But when I looked it up, a Republican in Oklahoma had put he filed this bill which would do exactly that, but he was doing it to make a statement actually that we need more um, investment and looking into mental health and drug abuse treatment and stuff like that. So he was doing it to anger people, not because he wanted it to actually pass and to do that, but to make a statement. So it was actually like a protest bill that he had put forth in order to do that, which honestly kind of surprised he was a Republican who was doing that, but kudos to him. But the whole thing was that was then taken completely out of context, and people thought that it was like a legitimate bill that was actually going to do this, as opposed to just being like there was one on the left where a Democrat filed a bill recently to say that uh, conception starts with ejaculation and that like all men had to regulate their ejaculations and like it was really well done, but it was, you know, completely using all of the standard verbiage for you know abortion bills and stuff like that. It was very cleverly done to make a point, you know, obviously
Right.
he wasn't really trying to do that. So it's just a matter of like, you know, we can see how easily we can be swung from one thing to another when we don't have all of the facts behind it, but we feel like we have all the facts. And even when we have more of the facts, then we feel like we have the facts. So like even knowing that that Republican put forth a bill that was just made to be kind of a protest awareness kind of a bill, I don't even know if that's true. Right? Like maybe he really does want that, and that, but we're so quick to get locked into anything that feels comfortable, and it's really just a perfect time to be exploring these things where we can batter back and forth our sense of security of having any sort of, you know, fundamental idea of what is true on any topic.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're preaching to the choir, and
Yeah.
I will, I recognize that I still, the ability to get to the place of all points of view being absolutely relative, I'm not there,
Yeah.
but I think it's within reach. You know, I can go all the way back to when I was 19 or 20 and reading the nonfiction writings of Robert Anton Wilson. And a couple of books in particular were about this very thing. You know, he referred to belief systems. he, he intentionally abbreviated them as BS, and he referred to them as reality tunnels.
As reality tunnels, did you say?
Yeah, reality tunnels. You know, that this is the lens, you know, a kind of a tunnel that we view the world through. And you know, he suggested he would have exercises in his books, and one of the exercises, you know, to try to get inside of a belief system that you found totally repugnant, but
Yeah.
really try to get inside of it and take on that belief system. And so
Yeah.
at the time, Rush Limbaugh was big on the radio, and so I tried and was able to
Yeah.
fairly well really get inside that that belief system and take it on as if it was true.
Yeah.
But there's still a way to go with it. But that's something you said about never really knowing if something is true. That's kind of where it's at with me, is that I just, I hear things and like, maybe,
Exactly.
that's really the only answer I can give, because
Yep.
that is kind of how I see things. Again, even though I will fall into it in some ways, and get pulled into the long-standing conditioned way of seeing things that I have, still there's an understanding of the fact that you just really can't know what the truth is. You
No.
really can't. It's just there's just no way. And I heard it once summed up as, there is no firmament.
Yeah. Yeah.
God,
True.
that was the ending line in a famous play by, I can't remember his name, but anyway, and that was the gist of it.
Yeah.
That's the gist of the meaning of there is no firmament. There is no solid ground. There is nowhere to land. You know,
No.
uh, it, Reality and our understanding of it is just constantly shifting sand.
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that way of putting it. Yeah. Even if we see something happen directly in front of us, we know that our viewpoint of something is completely conditioned and it's
Hmm.
not really necessarily what has happened. And we literally can't always trust our eyes and our ears. Um, we have many conversations with people where we think somebody says something that they didn't actually say, or they certainly didn't say it the way that they said that we think they said it. But there are times, I mean, you can hear recordings back sometimes, like, I swear you said blah, 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 and then you hear it back. Oh, guess not. We really cannot trust our senses.
Well, and I catch myself doing that. I don't know if it's just because the visual sense tends to be the dominant sense, or if it's because of, going back to Robert Anton Wilson, he related a personal experience where there was a cleaners that he would pass on the way to and from, when he was working as an editor at a place. And he saw it for days, weeks, I forget how long. And he was convinced it said half gay cleaners. And then one day, he it kind of caught him from, he kind of saw it from a fresh perspective
Yeah,
for whatever reason. He saw that it was half day cleaners.
that's funny.
And so I can't think of an example, because it happened to me just the other day. I saw something,
Yeah,
and like, wow, what the heck is that? Oh, it's not. It's something else.
yeah,
You know,
totally.
I mean, I
Yeah,
love the way he described it. Our nervous systems are constantly making gambles in order to take all the signals that our nervous system is receiving,
yeah,
and put it together in a coherent fashion.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
always it's always a crapshoot.
It is. It is. It's so interesting that it feels so real until
Uh-huh.
you start, you know, really starting to play with it and becoming more aware of all of the little inconsistencies. I'm in a very strange group on Facebook, mostly just for the entertainment value. It's like Matrix Mysteries or something like that. They changed their name. It used to be like a Mandela Effect group, and
Oh yeah.
it's really, really interesting to hear stories that people have of these. I mean, most of the time, it's really just because of clearly our memories are incredibly fallible, and that there's
Right.
something that is just, we've overlooked something, we've seen something a weird way. But there are some stories that are a little bit harder if they're true to, you know, easily rationalize in certain ways. But it is entertaining to see how we go from, like, instead of jumping to weird shit happens, maybe my mind is actually, creating things in a way that's like a little bit uh, uh non-trustworthy, to
Hmm.
I immediately know, like I think what's really interesting is reading the comments on there where somebody will have like a weird experience where like there have been a couple that actually, like I read to Pernilla and she said basically it sounds like a minor seizure that people have, and it feels like you're kind of moving backwards and you've jerked back in time a couple seconds. Like it feels like you
Hmm.
like walked past a building and then something happens and you feel like you get pulled back and you walk past it again. And I guess it's actually really common in a certain type of seizure, or that this sort of thing occurs. And and a couple people have had actually said that, but the thing is the certainty of the people in the comments saying you're shifting timelines when that happens and you are being it's like an interdimensional gateway to blah blah blah, and it's like utter certainty that their belief system maps on to this person's experience, which was probably that they were having a small seizure, like, but it's that kind of certainty in whatever it is, and that's an easier thing to like to buy into than maybe our brain is having a little mishap. Maybe there's a little oopsie with our fabrication of our virtual reality that we live out of.
Hmm.
And it's just so interesting to see though that people much prefer having that false sense of security about something, that they can, some belief system that they can buy into and use as their chosen lens to explain every abnormality in their perceptual system.
Well, this conversation has made me realize that even though I've got a pretty decent handle on it, at least probably fair to say in a kind of a preliminary way, that there's more work that can be done to really get to a more um, firmly and completely agnostic way of treating um, the the signals that the nervous system is picking up.
Yeah.
And especially with regard to my own way of viewing things.
Mm.
That's the big one. Is listening to you say what you've been saying, I recognize that there is this tendency to, and keep in mind, I'm very willing,
Yeah.
absolutely willing to say I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm uncertain. That's something that is very much um, well ingrained habits now, but still, it's easy, especially like with current events, to hear something and fall back on this default of, well, this is what I believe. This is how I see the world, and forgetting that that is just causes and conditions have led this person to
Mm.
see the world that way, and that's all it is, nothing
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
And to remember to take those things as relative.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's like there is a slight difference between, say, gaslighting ourselves into that false agnosticism, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you feel like you're pulled in one belief direction, and then instead of that, you go, no, 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 no. I'm gonna like, forcibly entertain the other, or just like come to some like, no, I don't know. Okay, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, and kind of convince yourself that way. But you can make it into like an inquiry where
Mm-hmm.
just doing the basic like check in with your five senses. When it feels like I know this to be true, I know that we are devolving into a system of fascism, or I know that, MAGA is going to save everybody and make us all rich, or whatever the belief system is there. Like, whichever one you happen to slide into, you go, okay, hold on a second. Like, I really feel like Trump is a good guy and he's got my back. I really feel like, Elon Musk is in this for my, personal benefit. He's really going to make the country better and stronger and all of that. If you really feel that, or if you really feel like we are descending into a dangerous pit of fascism, whichever one it goes into, feel in the body. First of all, there's that probably going to be some sort of an emotional sense going on there. So you just feel how that
Right.
emotional sense is happening. But what we're looking for is what it really feels like to know or have conviction in something.
Hmm.
So if it's not directly in front of you, it's not a drinking glass that is right in front of you that you can pick up. It's not something that is in the room with you. It's a concept, it's an idea. How do you actually know that that is relevant, true, available to know that conviction in the ability to know something? How is that felt? And I'm not talking about the emotional certainty behind it.
Mhm.
There's something else that makes us feel like we have the certainty to actually say anything for sure, to know anything for sure. And that, if you can try to find where that feeling is, and it's very much the same as like when we were talking about feeling into the feeling of craving and where that seems to be in the body, and then, you know, dissolving that feeling of like, is this really craving or is this just sensation in my chest and uh, the taste of blueberry pie in my mouth that flashes for a second and an image of blueberry pie that makes me think I want blueberry pie. This feeling of knowingness, there is some aspect of your experience somewhere in the five senses which is giving you that sense of knowing something. And if you drop into whatever that is and kind of absorb through whatever that sense seems to be, it's like you become so aware of it that it becomes just the raw sensation that it is, however it's showing up for you. It loses that extra binding element that makes it into something else, that makes it into the ability to know something. And then you're just kind of left with this open, drifting quality where we don't have to gaslight ourselves or convince ourselves that we don't know or that both sides might be right in some way or, you know, any of that. It's really a direct experience of the groundlessness just dropping out from under us, or the ground dropping out from under us. And as you said, that there is no firmament. It's that direct experience of that by feeling into whatever it is that feels like it can possibly know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But let's actually do it.
Yeah.
Let's actually walk through the process of using that as a practicing inquiry.
Yeah.